All right, we're kicking this off, everybody. If you haven't been here before, my name is Brian. Welcome to the weekly Media Buyer webinar. This is tips, tricks, takeaways, exclusive data for you from Northbeam. We're just going to take a look at performance week over week, the last couple of weeks, and then we're going to chat strategy because with me today I got Barry, who's one of the OGs, one of my favorite people making ads on the internet today. I love it when I'm scrolling through TikTok and I see either what I know is a Barry ad or I just see Barry in the ad. It's always a joy. Thanks for being on the show, man. I think these people are going to love to hear from you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Good to be here.
All right, we're going to keep it breezy because I know it's Monday. Everybody's busy, so we're going to get right into it. Auction metrics. If you've been following the last couple of weeks, you know that performance has not been great. We're in that weird time where we're like in between Memorial Day, Father's Day, 4th of July is coming. People are going outside, people are partying, but neither of these holidays are really holidays that people are necessarily like purchase intent, right? Like people are kind of looking for specific things that they might need at that moment. Like we were talking about last week, sunscreen, lawn chairs, canned margaritas, whatever it is, right? And performance has been really struggling in that time. One, because of CPMs being really high, being expensive. We had a bunch of meta bugs, which Barry, you report on every week. Appreciate you on that. And like we just had a lot of problems, and those kind of continue this week. We do see, thankfully, many of the auction changes are within 1 percentage point. So I will say, like a week over week, this is kind of the normal sort of spread you're expecting. Problem is, we're still having a really rough time in terms of ROI on our ads, right? So we're stable, but we're stable low, right? The one thing it is worth noting is like all these red arrows across conversion metric. This has been multiple weeks in a row now, and you know, for a while there, I was like, oh, are these bugs or these issues? But it's so consistent across all the platforms that I really do think it's like user intent. I talked a little bit in the newsletter yesterday about like bad news having an effect. Like people don't buy things when we have bad news, and I know y'all have heard about the submarine conversation that's been happening. That's bad news. Like on top of bad news, Meta did literally have, I think, 2 bugs last week on the 16th and the 19th, and that's going to have a negative effect on conversion. Like I think it was an ad delivery issue, but you could see the ROAS here on Facebook on Meta dropping like 0.25. That's a big drop from Meta. At the top of these charts, like Meta and Google, if you're seeing things that are kind of more than 1 or 2%, that's a big change compared to like what you see on TikTok, YouTube, because we just have smaller data sets, smaller spend there, right? So there's more variability. So overall, tough week, but we're hanging in there, folks. One thing that's worth noting is apparently all of y'all decided to spend a whole bunch of money on TikTok, which I'm happy about. Because you know what, I'll take credit for that we had Savannah on the call last week and she taught y'all how to run TikTok ads. And so TikTok spend is actually up 25% week over week. It's pretty amazing to me. That had, of course, as you can see, a negative effect on some of these conversion metrics. CPM is up as well. But once again, I really think there's great opportunity there. I know you're a big fan, Barry. And we'll get into some TikTok stuff as well later. Google, about what we were come to expect. Shopping finally got over 10% budget share, so people are spending more there. We know Google's prioritizing that. So this remains stable for me. I'm into it. Something that's worth noting is certain accessories or certain industries are like regressing back to the means. You can see in accessories dropping back off double digits. What that is like in this data set, I went and looked. It's you know, it's sunglasses, it's skincare, it's sunblock, it's summer things, right? And that's what's driving a lot of the accessories and fashion purchasing that was happening Memorial Day weekend, like the kickoff of summer for us. And the rest of these are looking pretty stable, honestly. Baby continues to rise. We have some really great performers in the baby category. That's one reason this is growing. So we are pulling this data set from, you know, Northbeam data. And a lot of our baby brands are like crushing it, right? So if you run a baby brand, I hope you're keeping up with them because they're doing a great job. Other things, it's looking pretty normal. I feel like it's week to weekly variables when you see 2 different colored arrows for each industry. So once again, not a whole lot to report here. We're in that in-between time between holidays where people are either coming off of a discount, they're coming off an offer, or they're thinking about the next one. So they're saving some of their spend, or they're ramping up their spend to push a discount, right? So long story short, a tough week for everybody. But what I did with the last issue in order to make it a little bit more interesting, have a little bit more fun with it. I pulled a bunch of cool AI tools. So if you haven't messed around with any AI tools at all, you don't know where to start, you don't know what to look at, go check out the links section in the last email that I sent yesterday. The AI issue in the subject line is what you're looking for. There's tons of cool links in there to check out. So now, plenty of time. I did that in 7 minutes. This is great. I would like to introduce Barry. Barry is a media buyer, consultant, ad creative extraordinary. He's been in the game a long time, millions of dollars made for brands, tons of cool ads, lots of work. If you don't know Barry, you need to. We're glad to have him on the show today. He's a good friend of mine, and I love your work, man. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, and always good to see you, my dude.
Today, I want to talk about something I've seen you tweeting about, and I have some of the ads and stuff up that we could take a look at.
Sure.
I want to talk creative strategy because we were talking about that with Savannah last week.
Nice.
And thinking about creative strategy and specifically how you are making ads. I know you have a very specific way of thinking about it, the make ugly ads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A lot of people, especially people who maybe run luxury products or have high brand sort of ideas, have a very kind of specific way that they want to make ads. And I know your objective is, your technique is totally different. So tell me, when you're thinking about, when you're working with brands, what kind of brands do you work with? How do you ideate ads? And just how do you conceptually think about making ad content that people want to engage with and click on?
Well, first of all, if you really want the answers to that, you got to join the summit on Wednesday. That's when I'll really reveal all the answers, the Northbeam summit. So I'm excited for that. I'm surprised you didn't plug that yet, unless I missed it.
I keep plugging it. Yeah, no, everybody join us. There's a link at the end of the previous email that I sent yesterday, the newsletter.
So yeah, I'll be revealing more there. But yeah, it's overall, it's just kind of looking back at like why we as marketers make the decisions that we do, why we prefer the aesthetics that we do, and thinking about like the crossroad of like, do consumers want that aesthetic? And if so, okay, cool. But if not, why not? And then what do we do aesthetically to do that? And then the whole point of Make Ugly Ads is to like dig into that question more and more and more, and find what is it about making an ad that makes more sense and is more consumable and enjoyable to a consumer than the stuff that we as marketers traditionally would want to make for them.
I feel like we always fall into a trap, and I know I'm definitely this person. I'm like, all right, like what kind of jobs need to be done, right? Like what do we need to do? And I think if you have kind of a rhythm, or if you come from an agency, or you work with agencies, there's kind of a rhythm for like the common sense of what an ad should have in it.
Yeah.
And what it sounds like you're suggesting is like, well, it's not that we shouldn't make ads, and it's not that we shouldn't make organic content. It's that, and it's not that we should make ads that pretend to be content. It's more like, how do we make something that people actually want to watch, right?
Right. And that being either by making genuinely great content, or by at least feigning to pretending to make great content, or using the tricks that great content have in them, and making stuff like that, even if you can't make a genuine great piece of content. That's it's sometimes just like looking at the aesthetic of what people are. It's really just looking at and studying what the aesthetic of what most people are consuming, particularly the people that are in your target market. And when I say that, I also don't mean what you think is your target market. I mean like who your actual potential target market is, which is typically broader than what a lot of people think is like, people are like, oh yeah, well, our audience is like moms 35 to 49. And I'm like, well, okay, well, there's other people that'll buy your products. I get it. Like, yeah, it's that, but it's also potentially more than that. So some of these things are just like stories we tell ourselves as marketers who were, I don't know about you, Brian, but like I'm a marketer trained by, the previous generations of marketers through, I studied marketing in school, but also, so those educators, and then all of my previous jobs were, leadership were people that came from the world of traditional marketing or were brought up by leaders that were in traditional marketing. So it's this, like weird old archaic system that we're all, a lot of us have been through, or at least affected by indirectly, even if we weren't ever traditional, marketers, we've all been affected by that. So a lot of those ways of thinking about things are outdated now. And we have to like actively think about how to create differently and think about our audiences differently, because now the machines are doing a lot of the work for us.
That's exactly right. I'm gonna stop the share so we can see each other here.
Oh yeah, there you go. Hey, yeah.
It's like, I used to say this thing that I really appreciate that you do a lot. It's like,
Mhm.
you really have to believe, you have to be your audience to
Yeah.
really write something that really connects with them. And
Mhm.
that can be tough when you're an agency, like bouncing through different products, or
Sure.
you have a product that maybe you're not the target audience for. But I'm like, yeah, but you can really inundate yourself in that audience and understand their
Right.
content, like you're saying. Like it's kind of the same as like what they used to say is like, oh, if you're going to sell something, if you're going to market it, you really need to use it, you need to understand it. What you're saying is like a step further. It's like you need to understand what their digital experience is like when they're
Yeah.
on Facebook, when they're on
Yeah.
TikTok. Like, what are they seeing and engaging
Right.
with,
Right.
so that you can make something fit in there, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's both. It's very much both. And the way I like to say I maybe cheat is just like, what is the biggest problem that person has, or the most common denominator of the problem that my audience has for buying my brand, my product, and how do I visualize that, and how do I visualize that or tell that story in a way that can make someone actually feel. That's what I gonna go that route. And literally, you can just take what I just said and like put that into ChatGPT, and it will give you a better start than where 99% of you would, and myself included, would start with that. Like I literally love going to ChatGPT and saying like, here's a product I'm selling. What are the 5-10 biggest pain points? And boom, I have something that I wouldn't have had without ChatGPT quickly. Like I might have had to sit down for an hour thinking through, or like doing customer surveys, or like talking to customers, or like, whatever it is. But now we have that kind of tool that can just give you that answer quickly. And then you can be like, okay, which of these is actually something I can visualize, something I can storytell around, and then go from there. And then the next, into the next step.
You're talking about storytelling in your ads, and
Yeah.
I want to talk about that in the context of like make ugly ads.
Sure.
Like I would always run into this thing where,
Mm-hmm.
we go and we try to make an ad, and I know it's going to be effective because we've gone through, we've done what you've said, we've connected with the audience, we know what they're
Mm-hmm.
seeing visually, aesthetically, the thing that we're
Mm-hmm.
making lines up and it's going to look like something they want to engage with in their
Mm-hmm.
feed. But then you get it back, you talk to clients, you talk to brand, you talk to whoever else, and they're like, I don't know, it doesn't feel on brand, it doesn't
Oh
feel
gosh.
right.
Right. Right.
How do you navigate that conversation? Because I
Mm-hmm.
know that there are people in this audience right now who face that.
It's tough. It depends on how well I know the person that I'm talking to, and how long I've been working with them, and how much they're trusting me or paying me. Because the question I usually want to just ask to their face is like, do you um, do you want to be rich, or do you want this to look good? I mean, that's a lot of what it comes down to, is like just removing your ego, um, and being willing to try something unconventional, less formal, for the sake of making more money. Um, because that literally is the exchange here. I literally had a brand once that wouldn't let us even test an asset because there was a crease in the bag, like in the product bag, the packaging. Like no one on my end noticed it. Like 12 people on my team didn't. No one noticed it, and the client rejected it. Wouldn't even let us test it for $500 just to see how it did. So like we didn't even know if it was worth reshooting. And like that's the kind of ego, and that's the kind of idiocy that prevents people from making money, when you just have something to at least play with and test to learn from before you say, okay, you know what, this isn't, this is hurting our brand. Hurting our brand, you don't have a metric to say that. No one has a metric to say like this is hurting our brand when you actually run something like that, or like putting a typo in an ad. Oh no, our brand's ruined. Like, is it?
Mhm.
Is it though? No, it's not. It might be embarrassing, and I'm not recommending that for most brands. I really am not. But like in the grand scheme of, brand equity and brand performance and brand value, those things don't matter. What really matters about brand is the actual experience, the actual product, the actual thing. And nobody will get to experience that product if you can't meet them where they are in the first place to get them to pay attention to you. And that's the challenge we're all facing, is this insane challenge for attention that we're all playing and we're all losing effectively. And that's the whole point of Make Ugly Ads, is to meet people where they are, which is that they're not ready for your branding, they're not ready for your logo, they're not ready for your whatever policies are about aesthetics. They just don't care about that. They don't, because that's not what they're on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok to see. They're just not there for it.
There's so much outsized emphasis, I think, placed on brand perception from like a visual and like an aesthetic way, when so much of what people actually feel about a brand, their actual perception, comes from their physical interactions with it. It comes from the emotions that happen, not the visual things that they see.
Yeah.
So like you can have a luxury brand with like a goofy, a weird, an ugly ad.
Yeah.
But if it makes somebody feel something, that's what they're going to remember.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to remember.
Exactly. I mean, like that's kind of the whole point, is finding the way to connect to someone's emotions quickly. And that is not through a white background, a product shot. There's nothing less emotional than that, I think. So, it's about doing that through the text overlays, doing that through, a line of just someone saying something, or doing it through even music or other audio sounds. Have some jarring sound that relates to whatever the problem is. Over exaggerate the problem. Don't over exaggerate the solution, the actual product, product itself. I'm not saying exaggerate or do anything illegal, please. But like you can show someone having the problem and exacerbate that. You can really agitate that problem visually, or again through audio or through text. That is just a way to make someone feel. And if you make someone feel, you've already accomplished more than most advertisers by a lot.
I think the challenge there is not just like selling this thing, to people who may have the final say, which is a whole other conversation we could have about how like it's tough being a growth marketer because you're held to the highest standard of performance, but you have the fewest amount of levers you can actually pull. But like there's that problem, right? And then the other problem is figuring out, okay, well, how do we actually make that stuff? Tell me about some ad formats you've been using lately, and maybe like some ideas of how they came to you. And like I could bring up examples even if you want me to. I can show videos.
Yeah, I mean, step one is just do it. Like literally, that's the best advice I've been giving lately. Is just whoever you are watching this, even if it never actually hits Facebook or TikTok or whatever, just shoot something. Just take your phone, go somewhere that, especially if it's somewhere that's relevant to where your product is, and just shoot a selfie video and speak passionately about the problem and the product and why it exists and why you care. If you're a founder, especially, that actually can really work well. Even if you suck on camera, even if you're self-conscious about how you look, even if you're self-conscious about your accent or how you sound or anything like that, just go do it. And a lot of times, if you actually are comfortable running that as an ad, the authenticity of that can crush, especially if you can hit a real relevant problem up in the front, or have some reason for someone to pay attention to that up in the front of that video. There's a lot that can do. You can also do that without you being on camera. If you can like film something else doing it, like you can do whiteboarding or like writing a note or something while you're talking. Another thing I've been recommending is like you can do a voiceover over an existing asset that you have or visuals that you have that what like a lot of people just have like the product or some other shots of it like UGC or whatever. Just do a voiceover over it. Like at least do that to like try telling some story. So that's video. That's harder. The other stuff you can do is just like post-it notes. Literally, like I have post-it notes here for stuff that I'm working on. I can't even show these. Oh, well, I could write one, but I can't even show these right now. But like I have post-it notes. Like literally, just take the post-it notes and put it on the problem, or like put it on a visual of the problem, or put it on a visual, or put it on the product. I don't love that as much, but I've seen that working. Like that was a thing that popped off on Twitter for Obvi, Ash from Obvi. Like he tweeted about that. I had like told everyone like go out there and shoot some ads, and he asked like what if I'm a brown guy in his 30s or whatever, and I'm selling a product for women in their 40s, and I said make a post-it note ad. Like you just need to get the problem out there, get the story out there in a visual way that doesn't look and feel like an ad, or doesn't look and feel like traditional marketing BS. And then the other piece I would say is like take some of your assets that you have, digital assets that you already have, like especially if you have like customer review images that you have the rights to use, and put some text overlays on that. Put some native style text overlays on it. Don't use your brand fonts. Don't use your brand colors. Use native colors. Use native Instagram platform fonts. Literally go like edit it in Instagram. You're like do it in there and make it look and feel like something that someone would actually post about that problem, about that product. And those are ways that a lot of brands could just improve their performance just by doing that. And the one other piece I want to add to that is when you're using your language in any of that, whether that's the videos or the post-its or like text overlays, anything like that, be very thoughtful about the language and make the language very reader first. Make it about them. Don't make it about the product. Don't make it about the brand, because nobody cares about the brand. Nobody cares about the product. Nobody cares about you. They only care about themselves. And that's the real key, is focus on making it something that they want to consume.
And like at the end of the day, that's the thing that feels to people who come up through normal marketing the most antithetical, because you're like, well, you're not saying any of the specific language that we've approved. And I'm like, but we are.
Yeah.
Because we're speaking to that problem that we've discussed as a brand is why we exist.
Yeah.
I'm just using language that our customers are using.
Yes.
Not ours.
That's the key. Yeah.
Yeah. And like sometimes you're like, no, it has to be said in a very specific way. And I'm like, or you could just say whatever they're saying in reviews, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, literally, yeah. You go and so double-edged sword there, by the way. Like kind of like I tell everyone, go look at your reviews to find what people are saying about it that's positive, but don't assume. The big mistake there is don't assume that because it's a positive review that it will work. The trick you want to find is find the excerpt from reviews like is super potent and is relatable and is potentially emotional. I recommend looking for like past tense I statements. Really, like if I can start with an I was, or I had, or I didn't, past tense things that were a problem, then the reader, the consumer, quickly starts to like think, oh, whatever I'm reading is whatever this thing that I'm learning about is the solution. Even if you're not directly saying that, that's what their brain already starts to do. They're already starting to move those gears in that direction, and that's what you want. So by saying that past tense problem, you're kind of like leading the witness to thinking this is the solution. And I find a lot of easy wins just by doing that.
And even like in platform, it's easy to say, oh, this hook is killing on Facebook. In reality, what's happening is that hook is killing for that specific subgenre on Facebook. You could have, let's say, for a lot of our brands, they're like, all right, how do I break these barriers of like, I hit
Right.
5 million revenue, I hit 10 million, I hit 15. It's reaching into new audiences,
Yeah.
which means even though it's still on Facebook, it means new hooks, new visual styles,
Yes.
new text. Like, so like
Yeah.
there's always opportunities to be finding, I think, the easiest fish to catch in each audience pond
Yeah.
with new angles and hooks. And that's why you're saying to people, like, just be testing new stuff all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. And that kind of like that testing and that is extremely important, but it's also kind of confused. It's actually really confusing. A lot of people get caught up in very specific metrics that they're used to seeing, CTRs, CPCs, CPMs. But if you are looking at your performance and you're like, oh, our best ads are or our best performance is this age, this gender, this placement, this device, you can't always just lean into that. Like, part of what you're doing should be like, okay, that's working, let's do more of that. But then you should also be looking at like what placements aren't working, what ages aren't working, what gender isn't working, and like figuring out how to find more scale in each of those if it's possible. Even if you don't think it's possible, you should be thinking like, how do I make this men's jean sell to women more, because there's scale there, because they will buy it for either themselves, believe it or not, or for their significant others, or for their children, or for whatever it is. So finding that scale there and knowing that your existing ads probably aren't the best way to go after younger audiences or older audiences than what you currently are already finding scale with. And each of those differences, like younger audiences, older audiences, Facebook versus Instagram, feeds versus reels, stories versus whatever, all of those are going to have different CTRs, different CPMs, different CPCs. So if you get too locked in different hook rates, if you get too locked into any of those metrics and you're like, then you can really kind of bury yourself in just what you have working now, and you'll never be able to find scale because you're too, oh, the CPMs are too high, but meanwhile, maybe that's good for the younger audience, or maybe CPCs are too, CTRs are too low for the older audience, but that's okay because maybe there's cheaper CPMs. Don't worry too much about those secondary metrics. Worry about the primary metrics, and the system will handle it for you.
It's like a combination of, I think, what we were used to in the past, which is like, oh, we can kind of game our structure a little bit, versus what I see it is now is like, yeah, your ads are always going to have to be changing, but that's kind of internet society, man. Like, it's always shifting. The way that people are consuming content, what they're engaging with, what they like, the trends are always kind of shifting. So like, you've just got to always be on top of that. And I think in a reductive sense, like, oh, what TikTok hooks are popular right now is like an easy one.
Sure.
But like, there's so much more than that. There's the platform they're on, the language they're expecting to see, the relationship they have with you. Like, like, I don't think there's ever like, oh, I just need one good ad. And I'm like, you can do it by committee. You can have so many successful ads in so many different places. Like, and none of them will last forever. Maybe one of them will, but like, maybe one of them you follow, like, I would argue the Geico model, and like, we had one funny ad with a gecko that like killed one time, and then they've spun it out into like a 15-year franchise, dude. Like, it's, and now we're so far down the rabbit hole that like, they don't even, the ad's barely an ad. It's like a skit on TV now. And you're like, well, I know what it is, right? That's so interesting. We're coming up on time, Barry. Tell me, what are you talking about at the seminar or the summit on Wednesday?
Everything we just talked about, but a little bit more in depth with some more examples, getting into the more nitty gritty of like some of the ways you can do more of this and ways, and some, I don't know, maybe more, I don't know if I can say success stories or examples of that, but like just getting more in the weeds on everything about this. Some of this will be, two of the points I think I made here are basically the exact point I'll be saying then, but so much more to dig into on Wednesday for sure.
If people want to get a hold of you, how can they find you?
Twitter is probably the best way, at Bing Hott, BINGHOTT. I'm on TikTok as Barry Hott, and then you can find me on LinkedIn as well or whatever. Bhott.com has all my links. BHOTT.com. So yeah, thank you.
Well, dude, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for dropping some honestly high level knowledge, because I think we all get stuck in the weeds a lot, and it's really important to be remembering like, well, why are we here? What's our overarching strategy? So thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. Everybody, will send this recording out very, very soon. Once again, Barry, thank you so much. And everybody else, I'll see you here next week. And
Thank
I'll see
you.
you on Wednesday.
Toodles. See you Wednesday.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.
Bye.